The process to go from this to this should have been pretty straightforward, but it turned out to be anything but. And it wasn't even the painting so much, it was just other things that kind of got in the way. So I'm gonna try and make this video as best as I can and edit it together as best I can to give you the full picture of exactly what happened. I've spoken before about how it takes me a while to get started. I tend to procrastinate and I have a hard time getting started on projects. So this piece needed a couple modifications and I was super proud of myself when I tackled all of those in a day, got them done, and got my piece prepped and ready to go. Modifications included removing the spindle thing that was on the top and then adding wheels. Since this looked like an apothecary cabinet, I kind of wanted it to really have that feel. I was really leaning into that, and so I added some wheels. Then I removed all of the hardware and cleaned it all up and was pretty much ready to go. My cleaning and prep process includes using a degreaser. In this case, I used Crud Cutter, making sure I get inside and outside the piece, vacuuming up dust bunnies, cobwebs, all the yucky, gross things that live inside. And in some cases, I do give the piece a light sand if I need to make sure that my paint has a good surface to stick to. This is most definitely the not glamorous but necessary part of the project. I took some time out to go to a Halloween party with my friends dressed as the Golden Girls, and just a day after that I started feeling unwell and wound up in the hospital for 2 days with salmonella poisoning. It took me about 2 weeks to fully recover and get all of my energy back, and I was finally able to tackle this project once again. So I start with a base coat of Old School by Debbie's Design Diary DIY paint, just applying it to get it all on there. The second coat I'm going to do is the same Old School, but this time I'm going to mix it with salt wash because I want to create some texture. So the reason I put the first coat of Old School on there and then I'm doing the second coat with texture, because I really am trying to get it so that I don't see any of the underlying wood color. I want to make sure I have full coverage on this. I mix the salt wash, just eyeballing until I get the consistency that I like, and then I like to use a big round brush and use a pouncing motion. I went ahead and added just a little bit of extra salt wash, sprinkling it onto the wet paint. What I should have done was also gone ahead and sprayed that with water, kind of locking that salt wash powder in there, but I didn't for this project, and I learned that that's what I should have done. And you don't have to add that additional sprinkling of salt wash on top of the paint. I just do because I like a little bit of added texture. Now we get to the good part where we get to add some color. I am using Monet's Garden, Aviary, and Mint Chip, all by DIY Paint. I have a separate brush for each one of the colors, my trusty water bottle, and this amazing brush by Bella Renovare. It's the Cristana brush, and it's great for blending, as you'll see in just a minute. So there's no right way or wrong way for color placement. I did decide that I wanted the bottom of my piece to be a little bit darker, so I concentrated the Monet's Garden on the bottom, but you can kind of do it however you want to do it. The really nice thing about DIY paint is that it is a clay-based paint and it's reactivated with water, so it makes blending so easy. It's a dream, and especially with a brush like this. So I just add enough water so that my paint doesn't feel sticky, and I keep moving my brush in different directions until I get something that I like. So if you like that blend, you can just stop there and leave it at that. I like to push things a little bit further, and I'm looking for a little bit more of a authentically distressed look. I want this piece to feel old. So I am using a frottage technique, which is basically just taking I use my lint-free Scott's rag in a box, put that on, and then pull it off. You do want to make sure that your paint is wet, so if your paint starts to dry out, you can spray it with some water and go to town. I use that same technique on the top, which is blending, 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 and then using the frottage technique to pull off some of that color and expose that Old School that's under there. This for me is actually quite fun. I hyper focus on this and I just take my putty knife and I start scraping away at a lot of that texture. I keep doing that until I get something that I like. So now it's time to show the drawers some love and attention. So I put them back in the piece. I knew they were going to be green, so the base coat is the old school. That's what we started with on the rest of the piece. I was undecided what I wanted to do with the hardware, and then I had ordered some hardware off of Amazon, which required me to fill in all of the existing holes. We're going to come back to that towards the end here. So after filling all of those holes and then going over it with some old school, I'm doing that same exact blending technique that we did on the sides and the top. I'm going drawer by drawer with all three colors, my water, my big blending brush, and then my frottage technique to pull some of those greens off to expose that old school that's underneath. And then same deal, I take my putty knife and I do some scraping. I like to do this when the paint is still a little bit wet, not when it's like super wet, but when it still has some softness to it because it makes it easier. And I could do this for days on end. It is somewhat of a messy process, as you can see. I then also took this little tool, which is my offset spatula, and was using it to scrape some more. And at this point, my husband was like, "Are you still picking at that piece?" And I said, "Yes. Yes, I am. I enjoy this." Once I had decided I was done picking at it, I just gave it a very light sanding just to make sure everything is all smoothed out, everything feels good. I go over all of the edges of the drawers, I clean out the insides of the drawers. I don't want this to be sloppy. I clean out the back sides of the drawers there so that everything is nice and neat before I decide to seal it up. I am going to start with some clear wax, and I'm actually doing things the right way. So I'm using, actually it's a little stick that comes with the IOD transfers to pull some of that clear wax out and put it on a plate. That way I'm not contaminating my wax for future projects. And I just give this an all over good coat of clear wax. You'll notice the color change. If you've watched any of my videos, you know that this is the way DIY paint behaves. You get a significant color change when you apply the top coat. After letting my wax dry overnight, I come back and I buff it with a clean, soft, lint-free cloth. Those Scott's rags in a box that I was using for the frottage, clean ones will do a great job of buffing. And since this is me and my projects, I am going to add some dark wax because I love dark wax. It does such a good job of shading and just creating some great depth and dimension to an already complex finish. So things were going along quite well. I was using those little label pulls, which are the ones that I got off of Amazon. I was putting them on, using my dark wax. I thought, I'm in the home stretch. I just have to, spend 15 minutes putting these on and I'll be off to the races. Little did I know what was in store. When I got to that third drawer, for whatever reason, it was impossible to get these pulls on. That is a screw that the head broke off and got embedded in my piece. I broke a couple little drill bits, and I can't tell you countless screws that I broke. So now I needed a plan B. Plan B involved going to my stash and digging through my hardware to see what I had, because I'd already bought some pulls from Hobby Lobby that I wanted for the top drawers and the rest of those on Amazon, which I'm now taking off. And I just didn't want to spend any more money on this piece. So I removed the drawer pulls that I had put on there already, refilled some holes, and thank goodness that this is a very distressed finish because I was able to do all of this and you'll never see it. I had to then re-drill the holes that, mind you, I had spent all that time filling. You can see that's the little plug that I had filled that all up with. When I tell you that I agonized and obsessed over the placement of all of these mismatched hardware, I did, and I really couldn't get past the fact that that's not what I wanted to begin with. I was so over this piece at this point, even my dog was over it at this point. I finished off with a little bit of that dark wax on the bottom, put the pulls on in whichever way I decided was best, and called it a day. Oddly enough, it sold pretty quickly, so whoever bought it was really happy with it, and I had a lot of positive comments on the placement of the pulls, and people liked the mismatched hardware. So even though it wasn't the vision that I had in my head for it, I think at the end of the day, it was just fine, and I was just really, really happy to have this piece finished. And at this point, because I'm editing, I am really, really happy to have this editing finished. I wanted to share the latest project that I've been working on. There will not be a video for this one, but it's the same exact frottage technique. It's got Old School as the base coat, and it has Monet's Garden, Sea Glass, and Old 57 as the blend. Thanks so much, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.